Well, it is definitely my honor tonight to have one of the greatest broadcasters of all time who's still doing it come on the HawkCast. So I don't want to waste any more time. I want to introduce the great JB, James Brown. JB, welcome to the podcast.
AJ, first of all, it is a pleasure to be on your show and a little bit of a turnaround. So I'm being interviewed by you now, so I'm going to be taking notes.
Hey, I'm going to be taking notes from I'm going to be asking you for some advice on here, that's for sure, because you have been one of those guys that I think everybody recognizes when you turn on the TV. Everybody knows who JB is, and I think you're one of the most, well-liked and beloved TV guys there is, which is pretty tough now to be a guy that seems to have a high rating. I'm sure with all the social media and crazy things going out there, I'm sure people love to really dump on people and try to pick them apart. And you're one of those guys that seems to stay above all of that. So I give you a lot of credit. You're a true professional, that's for sure.
Hey, AJ, first of all, I do appreciate that. But hey, look, you've been with the old timer here at NFL Films for the broadcast boot camp. So at CBS, they were encouraging us, leadership, to make certain that we stayed socially relevant and made use of Twitter and the like. So, AJ, during the course of the football season, I'm checking out, and most of the conversation and comments are all good. But, boy, let me tell you, and I'm sure you know this better than me, there's some rough ones out there. A couple cats were like, JB, your hairline has gone from your eyebrows to the middle of your head. Why don't you go bald, my brother? So I'm like, oh, hey, AJ. So I went home to my wife. I said, sweetheart, should I go bald? She said, no, keep the little strands up there.
You look good. You're ageless. That's one of the things I was looking some stuff up on you, and I was watching some of your older videos.
Oh my goodness.
You look the same as you did back in 1991, basically. So how do you do it, man? You're one of those guys that seems to never age. You always look the same.
Well, you know what? That's a blessing to say the least. Although Howie Long, my good friend over at Fox, he will argue otherwise, saying, JB, you got to get down another 40 pounds. And I know when I was talking with you at the broadcast boot camp before, I was bringing in my own food. So, AJ, I've been on this nutrition program now for about 15 years, and I think I've lost an ounce a year. So I guess I'm making good progress, right?
It's better than gaining an ounce a year, I guess.
Yeah, no question about that. And I'm still working with this bad boy, so I'm trying to get my little camera position here, so bear with the old fella. Go ahead.
That's all right. We appreciate you coming on. You referenced you were coming from you're in Mount Laurel to run the broadcast boot camp, and I was lucky enough to get accepted and attend that broadcast boot camp last year. So I know what kind of the next 3 or 4 days you have coming up, because you're the guy that's hosting it, running it. You're doing everything there. So thank you for taking some time out of your schedule. I know you're going straight from this to over there, probably to the introduction of everybody there. And is there any way you could kind of walk us through how you got involved in that, or what it is really? I don't think not many people know about it that haven't attended.
And you know what? That's a great question, because so many people wonder what the NFL or the NFL Players Association may be doing for guys like you to prepare for your post-athletic career pursuit. And this is now the 8th annual NFL Broadcast Boot Camp. And in synopsis, it is an opportunity where the NFL selects 20 key players. You well know that you had to apply for the opportunity to be selected, and you were, because you got a tremendous amount of talent, AJ, in terms of pursuing something after your football career is over. And the NFL brings in all of its partners, TV partners, radio partners, and some from print as well, to give the players as well-rounded a view of all of the opportunities that exist in the media, not just in front of the camera, but as producers, as directors, as writers, in radio, etc. And I think it is the most intense camp that I've ever seen, for 4 days, where you guys are run through. Hey, it's like training camp for you guys, where you get a good handle on all of that, or at least a good glimpse of all that the media has to offer, and to see where your strengths are and what you might want to pursue.
It really is. And I knew going in, they told me it would be a lot of work, and they said, come prepared to work. And I think it's 3.5 days or so. And they have you, you're starting early in the morning, and you start out and have a lot of great group sessions where you will lead a panel discussion, maybe with some other former players that have gotten into broadcasting, or people that, maybe some execs, some producers, whatever, through ESPN, CBS, whatever it is. And then you have these breakout sessions where you go and you practice and you write scripts to read on the prompter. And then the best part is they put you up, they watch your film, you sit there and watch it like it's American Idol in front of everybody else, and then they critique you in front of the whole group. So I like that. I think that's good for us, and it's tough to be honest with yourself, I think, when you're watching, and that's the biggest thing for sure, whether it's football, broadcasting, anything, because you have this idea of what you look and sound like, I think, and then when you sit there and watch it with other people, like, oh, geez, you're trying to crawl into your chair thinking, man, this is not what I thought I looked like or I sounded like, I think. So
it's
I think what you guys are doing is a great thing.
You mentioned that, AJ, because quite frankly, for all the years that I have been in television, I don't particularly like watching myself. I don't like listening to myself, but I know it's important, much like you guys have to go to the video sessions, the film sessions, to watch in preparation for next week's opponent or review last week's game of footage, if you will. It's not a fun thing at all, but I commend you that you embraced that and did it, because so many guys aren't comfortable knowing that on the football field, they know that. They're comfortable with that. They're excellent at it. But now you're talking about preparing for the rest of your life, which is a lot longer than your football career will have been, and to open yourself up to constructive criticism, to see where your weaknesses are, and to actually start from scratch as you prepare to pursue another career, that can be a pretty daunting task.
It definitely is, and it's something that anyone that has seen any of these podcasts I've recorded before, I talk about how I would say underrated you guys are, you TV guys. I say it all the time. I think I told you that at boot camp. Like, man, what you do is you just make it look so easy, and it's true. You guys do, but that comes through every time I talk to anyone like you. It's through your preparation. You don't just walk up there and all of a sudden you're sound like you do, like JB, a guy that's been on TV, and I know you started way back in the day after you attended Harvard, which I'm going to get into in a second. But it is the behind the scenes stuff that goes on before, say, your shows. I mean, you're hosting multiple shows right now, but you're one on the NFL Today on CBS now every Sunday before games and after halftime, all that stuff. How many hours would you say are spent preparing for just one Sunday, one game day?
Wow, great question. It's probably akin to what anybody else in the workforce is doing. If it's a 40-hour work week, it's at least that in terms of what we do, because the importance of staying on top of information that changes daily. Heavens, you're in the league, and I know while you're focused on what's going on there in Green Bay, you've got friends and colleagues around the league, players that you admire as well, too. And just staying on top of things, whether you're online, Googling information to see what's happening, whether you're watching the highlight shows on TV, whether it's ESPN Sports Center or whatever, if it's calling friends or calling players and coaches around the league, it is so critical that we stay on top of things. I think the best way to look at it, John Madden, the iconic broadcaster with whom I was blessed to work, to go to a game site and prepare for a game is really a work. It's a marvel to watch, because John would lead the way with his broadcast partner and the producer and director, and he would sit there and ask a zillion and one questions that came on top of all week long watching footage to prepare to see what your tendencies are as a team. And then he would allow his broadcast partner to ask questions, and the producer and the director. And at the end of that session, John would turn around and look at everybody, and he would ask one question: is your bucket full? Meaning, are you fully prepared for what will be coming on Sunday? And if your bucket was full, then you can make it look easy. It becomes very difficult and hard if you're ill prepared for it, much like you guys as players as you get ready for an opponent on Sunday.
Is he asking those questions in like production meetings with players and coaches, or is that with just you, the people on TV, and the producers behind the scenes?
Well, that's insightful. He does it both ways. He certainly does it on site with the team. If he comes to Green Bay on a Friday, he'll sit with you, the coaching staff, and some other select players that he wants to talk with. But well prior to that, on his bus ride from one location to the next, he's reading newspaper articles. He's reading online columns and blogs. He's on the phone talking to coaches around the league. So he's doing all of this preparation before he gets to the location just to make certain he knows which questions to ask and what to focus on as the game strategy, just like you guys, is prepared for the TV crew to make certain that we are on top of things. So he does a very thorough job, and he's impacted so many of us, much as Dick Vermeil, the ex-coach, Dick Vermeil impacted a lot of us as well, too. And Dick Vermeil is a workaholic like none other.
He is. He showed us last year at boot camp, he showed us his call sheets he takes to games when he calls a game of all the players, and the little his special symbols he has for, you know, maybe a story if the game's a blowout or something, different little anecdotes he would know about certain players and things that he could bring up to keep it flowing. And man, you could tell that guy is serious. It was no joke. It was really, really great to see that. And I had Joe Buck on here before, and Joe showed us call sheet. Maybe I'll have to go back and look. Maybe from the Super Bowl he called that I was lucky enough to play in, and it's just it's unbelievable because we think you guys just step in front of the camera and that's it. Oh, yeah, there you go. Just like us sitting on the couch talking about the game, and that's far from the truth. I'm sure you obviously know. But how many years have you been on TV or pursuing this TV world that you're in?
Wow. Now I really do realize how old I am when I dust off the cobwebs, AJ, to think back, because I was actually working in corporate America after being cut by the Atlanta Hawks. My thing was basketball, and I was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. Was one of the last guys cut, so I didn't get a chance to realize my dream as you are living yours playing professionally. So I started working for Xerox and then Eastman Kodak. And about 1979, when the Washington then Bullets had just won the NBA championship, I became the analyst for the Washington Bullets basketball team. And I gave myself, bear with my voice, I've got a raspy voice here, having spoken in 2 services in church yesterday, so my voice is a little raspy. But I gave myself a 5-year game plan to try to make it to the network level, and incredibly blessed to have realized that within that 5-year period, and actually it wasn't to the network level, it was just to get a job full-time in television, where I started in Washington, D.C. But much like you, AJ, I never, ever rested on my laurels. After getting cut by the Atlanta Hawks, and I really wanted to play professional basketball, I made a commitment that I would never, ever allow an opportunity that I wanted badly to pass me by because I was ill-prepared. So I worked hard during that stretch until after about 5 years, I started working in local television in Washington, first for the ABC station and then for CBS, and came to the attention of the executives at CBS doing some NCAA basketball tournament games. And then they asked me, look, if you really want to pursue this as a serious profession, you need to learn how to do a number of sports, and football is at the top of the heap. AJ, my first football game, I think I told you guys this story. Tampa Bay Buccaneers were hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Thank goodness the game was only being televised to about 5 people, because I said the running back got tackled on the 65-yard line, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but I still overcame that mistake.
You did that. Was that before the time of that probably didn't go, that's not sitting on the internet, is it, anywhere?
No, you know what? I know that's a great question. I think it was before the internet. But NFL Films, the Sable family, God bless Steve Sable, they memorialized that in the story that I told. And I think they showed footage from the game, but I don't think they actually had the call where I was saying that James Wilder, who was the running back in the day, got tackled at the 65-yard line. And I compounded the mistake when my producer got in my ear and said, JB, there's no such thing as a 65-yard line. Go to commercial. I was so shook up with his tone of voice, I looked up at the stadium clock, and the clock was wrong, but I read it just as it indicated. I said, well, we're going to take a commercial break with 8 minutes and 99 seconds left in the third period of play. It was brutal, AJ, but thank God the network executives bore with me, and I overcame that as well.
Yes, you did. You've come a long way, I would guess, because I've never seen you shook up at all on stage. You always seem so in control of the situation, whether you're, you're hosting, your pregame show on CBS, or you're interviewing somebody, or you're running a panel like at Broadcast Boot Camp. I know you give speeches around the country as well and speak at your church too. Do you feel like you are always in control, or is it that whole thing that you just act as if, even if you're not, you just act like you know what you're doing?
There's probably a little dose of the latter that you just mentioned as well, to always stay calm and never let them see you sweat. But I've learned, as I'm sure you found out at Broadcast Boot Camp last year, there's nothing wrong with taking a few seconds when somebody asks you something, or a situation that was unexpected comes up, to kind of reflect on what it is you're seeing and what it is you're about to say, so that your thoughts come out in a coherent and cogent fashion. But I'm not one of these naturally gifted types, I don't think. I work very hard at it. There's some preeminent broadcasters in this business, all of whom you know. You mentioned Joe Buck. Joe Buck is one of the best ever. He obviously a chip off the old block, because his father, Jack Buck, was simply sensational. Joe's got a great sense of humor. Bob Costas is as sharp and as bright a guy as you'll ever want to work with. Obviously, Chris Berman's been doing it a long time at ESPN. So you got a lot of guys, who are just exceptional at what they do. And I just try to make certain that I'm maintaining a standard of excellence. When I got my opportunity at Fox to co-host the pregame show with Terry Bradshaw and Howie Long and Jimmy Johnson, and then coming back to CBS and working for Sean McManus now. So I just try to make certain that every lesson I learn, that I take that lesson into each broadcast and never take anything for granted.
Now, you were referencing working. You started out. You started at CBS, then went to Fox, and now you're back at CBS. How did that whole situation play out? And when you started at CBS, what were you doing? And now, can you explain all that you're doing? Because I know it's like you pop up everywhere on CBS. I'm watching you sit in for Scott Pelley and co-hosting, or sitting in when he's out for a little bit. You're interviewing not only athletes but people from all walks of life. So how broad is your job right now, and what all does that entail?
I am incredibly thankful and humbled, AJ, that I get these opportunities. I think when I first got into the business of broadcasting, I never wanted it to be just involving sports, because, like so many people, my interests are broader than just sports as well. And I recognize sports is the foundation upon which I've built. But I think if you understand how to be a good reporter, and it goes back to advice I got from a gentleman by the name of Ted Shaker, who was an executive producer at CBS my first time around. And he says, to the degree that you are well-rounded, that you can be a universal, a versatile kind of player, you will ensure some longevity in this business. And boy, has that come through. So I learned how to be a good reporter, just like you did at the boot camp, how to go out and give a report out on the street for 1 minute and 30 seconds or 2 minutes, whatever it may be, how to host in a studio show, which I've made my living at most of, how to do play-by-play. I did analyst work. I've done sports. I mean, it was almost like, hey, I'm Mikey, that guy on the commercial. Give it to Mikey. He'll do anything. I covered so AJ, so back in the hood at Fox when I was doing football, the boss asked me to host the NHL, the hockey show. So I remember going to the barbershop and talking to some of the brothers in the barbershop, and they said, well, JB, now that the football season's over, what are you going to be doing? I said, hey, man, I'm pretty excited. I'm going to be doing hockey. And the brother said, okay, we'll catch you next football season. But it was so cool. And now to take that one step further, so when I'm introduced to the national press that covers hockey, they said, okay, well, and now the host of the NHL on Fox is going to be James Brown. And if you could have seen the writers out there, so they're asking me questions like, JB, do you know what icing is? So I explained that rule. They said, JB, do you know what a two-line pass is? I explained that rule. JB, do you know how they substitute in hockey? I said, yes, there are line shifts. I said, fellas, look, let's take the veneer off of the questions. I understand what you're asking. The bottom line is this. Hockey was not big in my neighborhood. Okay, I get that. And number two, the only thing I have in common with the sport is the color of the puck. but I promise that I will be as hard a worker and as good an ambassador for your sport. And I felt like I had made it when I was covering the NHL Stanley Cup. And in the stands in New Jersey, there were a bunch of fans who held up a sign that said, James Brown, Godfather of Goal. So that made me feel pretty good, AJ.
Yes, I was going to ask you about doing hockey because there can't be a tougher sport. I've spoken on here about it. Believe me, hockey wasn't huge in my area either. It was mainly football, baseball, and basketball. We're always fans of it, but I couldn't explain to you a lot of those rules. So I'm sure it's one of those things where you had to go out and really study. And I've become a big fan of hockey recently, but those guys I talked to Kirk Herbstreit on here, and I told him Doc Emery is one of the greatest play-by-play guys I think I've ever if you just sit there and listen to him, you don't even have to watch the game. I'm in awe just watching that guy call a game. It's amazing. Doc Emerich, my bad, right? Yeah,
simply Emerich. Sensational. Yeah, you had it right. Doc Emerich, yeah, Mike Emerich. He is one of the best broadcasters no matter what the sport is. He's got a great voice. He tells a great story. Hockey is fast-paced. That puck is racing down the ice, and he's got these people coming off in line shifts, and he's talking like he's out for a Sunday drive. And the one thing that I always followed, Clint Eastwood's advice was a man has got to know his limitations. So I would always agree to be a hockey studio host, but not a play-by-play, because that is one of the toughest positions around. And Doc Emerich is absolutely the best at it. He is sensational.
He really is. And I knew about him before I even watched hockey regularly, I think, just because you recognize his voice. And now that I pay attention to him, you're right. It's like he's just on a stroll in the park talking about what's happening out there. And it's the fastest thing ever with the hardest names to be able to pronounce. And guys, oh, by the way, they're changing out every 40 seconds too. So huge respect for that guy. But I wanted to ask you about your college life. I mean, it's not every day I get to talk to somebody that went to Harvard and was the captain of the basketball team. So how'd you get there, and what did you study while you were there?
Well, when I played high school basketball, I was blessed at about 40, 50 pounds lighter than AJ to have been recruited by every major college in the country, and it was truly a blessing, and I'm very thankful. My mother and father, God bless them, really drove home the point about being academically sound, and that academic excellence was going to set you well for the game of life. And Bill Bradley, way back in the day, was a hero of mine when he was playing at Princeton. And I was thinking, gosh, if I could go to an Ivy League school and marry academics and athletics, that might be a pretty good setup for the game of life. So when I saw on my high school coach's desk a letter from Harvard, I was thinking, wow, if I could get in there, I'd go. And so it really worked out well. It was absolutely one of the greatest experiences in my life. Some of the brightest students from around the world. The hardest thing about Harvard was getting in, because you have to work to flunk out. They put so much emphasis on ensuring that they've got the right match there. And they did the same thing with me, even with basketball talent, because there are no athletic scholarships given there. You have to qualify academically. And you know what? So American government was my major. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And then I thought at one point maybe I would go to business school. But I got sidetracked with this thing called basketball, trying to make it. And when I got cut by the Hawks, it was in September, so I couldn't start law school late. And that's when I started working at Xerox and Eastman Kodak and decided to pursue a business route. But then I was on a local television show, and the guy said, hey, there's an opening for the Washington Bullets as an analyst position there. Why don't you go and audition for that? And that got my interest in the media, and the rest is history from there in terms of how I made the game plan and laid it out and worked aggressively. And AJ, I did any and everything. I went to high school football games on Saturday mornings when it was raining, standing out there on the sidelines, logging the games. But I really wanted to make certain I earned my way from the ground up to be prepared for the bigger opportunities when they came, which is why I'm so thankful at CBS, as you mentioned, doing a number of other things, reporting for 60 Minutes or 60 Minute Sports, or being able to and being blessed to sit in for Scott Pelley on the evening news with that kind of backdrop. It's almost like if you play the regular season well and display the necessary grit, perseverance, understanding of the game, by the time you come to the Super Bowl, you treat it as another game, knowing it's not just another game, but you've put in all that time, all that perseverance during the regular season. When the big game comes, you've gone through enough circumstances and experiences, you're ready for that. And that's what I was doing. I was ready for it, and I was excited about it.
Did you ever think about going into politics? Because when I saw what you majored in, I was thinking, man, he might have thought about jumping into politics for a second, because you I've seen you speak. You can really get a crowd going. That's for sure. Was that ever a thought for you?
I had given it some thought, but I wanted to make certain that my family had a good financial foundation. So, but I did think about it quite some time ago, and there was some interest. But, you know, politics is a tough business. And not that I want everybody to like me, because everybody is not going to like you. And as a matter of fact, if everybody does like you, something might be wrong, quite frankly. But I thought that I might be able to be more effective behind the scenes and being very active in campaigning and doing the things like you do for so many nonprofit causes or charitable causes. I wanted to be involved that way, AJ.
Okay. And the thing is, if anybody goes to your site, what is it, jbjamesbrown.com?
Yes, sir. How simple is that, buddy?
I like it. If anyone goes to your site, you can see what you are involved in. I mean, you have a production company? Is that right?
Yep.
You have like a technology company. Can you explain to us what a couple of your other business ventures you have, other than the full plate you have on TV?
Well, you know, I love teasing by saying I am literally and figuratively a minority owner of the Washington Nationals baseball team. Baseball was my first love. And when the owners, the learners, who happened to be friends, were seriously pursuing baseball, they had asked me to be a part of that pursuit. And I'm very thankful to have played a very small role in helping to bring baseball back to Washington, D.C., and the stadium is within about 5 blocks of where I was born. You mentioned the IT company, the Brown Technology Group. We are a small IT company. Right now, mostly involved in staff augmentation, getting guys, you know, obviously Mr. Bisciotti, the Baltimore Ravens, has done immensely well in that arena, providing people with unique expertise and high-tech expertise to companies across the world. We're trying to do that in our own little niche, and we've been relatively successful at it, partnering with Fortune 50 companies and going after IT opportunities. And so I'm excited about that. My brother has been involved in the IT business for about 30 years, and so he's doing a good job of leading the charge in that. I'm also involved in some real estate development with a very prominent company based in South Carolina called Edens, E-D-E-N-S. And right now they're involved in a significant development opportunity in Washington, D.C. At the old, what used to be called the Florida Avenue Market. And it is a hot development that is going to be a real magnet in Washington, D.C. And I'm so excited to be involved in that from the standpoint that it is based in the community where I grew up. So here's an opportunity not only for a significant development opportunity, but to give some job opportunities for residents in that area, as well as affordable housing so that the citizens can be a part of this movement forward in Washington, D.C., because D.C. is becoming like a little Manhattan, New York right now.
Man, you sound like you're a busy guy. I know you have some grandkids as well, so it's good to see that you're full of energy. That's for sure with the ventures you have. I don't know if you remember or not, but you came and spoke to us in Green Bay. Man, this might have been 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago.
Isn't that something? I remember that. Yes, sir.
You came and spoke to us, and I don't know if I think it was a surprise that it was going to be you. Yeah, they never really tell us who's going to come. And you started off with a clip of Eddie Murphy doing the James Brown Too Hot in the Hot Tub from the SNL skit. And everybody remembers that. I mean, it wasn't my first time seeing that, but man, it was amazing. And then all of a sudden, they play that clip. Anyone that hasn't seen that, just go to YouTube and find it. It's amazing. And then you come strolling in afterwards, and that was part of your intro. And I tell you what, you really had us from there, and then you were amazing the rest of the time. But do you do that a lot? You go in and speak to teams and corporations?
I haven't spoken to as many teams lately as I did back then. I was able to speak to the Green Bay Packers, as you mentioned, the San Francisco 49ers. Probably done it with the Washington Redskins. So I've done a handful of teams. I've also spoken at the chapel service for the New York Giants. And have been extended others as well too. I just have to be a little careful about not trying to spread myself too thin. And I did used to give an awful lot of speeches in corporate America, but as you mentioned, or I certainly did at the top of this, I've been very actively involved with my wife and our church, and particularly young people. So I'm on the ministerial staff at our church, and as a result, I've been invited humbly to speak at a number of churches around the country and men's groups, etc. Coach Tony Dungy is a very good friend of mine, and we've been actively engaged in doing things along those lines, trying to give back in a very meaningful fashion, and hopefully contributing significantly to strengthening the fabric of communities around the country. So that has been taking a lot of my time, and I really, really enjoy that, AJ. It's a lot of fun.
I'm exhausted listening to what you do. Your schedule.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know, I'm thinking my wife is probably going to be exhausted. Like, hey, slow down, big fella. You know.
You got to eat. I know you're always you had that special diet for 15 years. You have to. You got to eat, man. You're running around crazy everywhere you go, and I'm sure you're. I would guess. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I would guess you're one of those guys that has a hard time saying no to people just because you're such a good guy at heart and you're such a nice person. Is that the thing for you, is saying no?
AJ, you're spot on with that, and it is. And it's only in the last year or two that I've gotten better at that. One of the things that Coach Dungy was telling me in the offseason, he has an 8-week period that is his free period that he goes with his family to enjoy everything. They go to the Pacific Northwest just to enjoy. And I sampled it this year by taking a 3-week straight stretch. AJ, I'm so sorry I didn't double that or triple that because I had a great time. We've got a little country place down by the water in our area, and I so enjoyed that. And you mentioned the grandkids, to hang out with them. I've got 3 granddaughters and a grandson, so they're 6 years of age, 4, 2, and 9 months. And I remember one time I had the 3 grandkids by myself, the 3 girls, because obviously the baby, they wouldn't give me the baby. And I kept the 3 grandgirls by myself. AJ, that was like playing defense 1-on-3, and somebody was always open.
That's the great thing about being a grandparent. You get to hand them back, though. That's what my parents tell me.
Yes, indeed, and it was a joy handing them back, too, just to catch some breath. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's got to be nice. I know my parents are loving it because they want to see my kids, and I have two older brothers that have kids, but they get to come up and maybe hang out for the day and maybe spend the night, but then they know if things are getting rough, like you said, one kid's always open. You know that the kids are going home in the morning probably, and you can probably mentally prepare yourself to really enjoy that time because they're going to be gone in a little bit, and that's when you can take a rest and maybe lay down for a second.
Well, being a young parent like you, I'm sure you've seen all kinds of experiences. AJ, I had forgotten, how challenging it could be because I forgot to burp the baby one evening, and then she, put milk all over me as a result of my forgetting that. And then the youngest one, when it came time, I forgot about changing diapers. And AJ, I like, how can such a little package create such a volume of toxic waste? And I called one of my buddies up, and he didn't know anything. He says, hey, just put her in the shower and hose her down. It'll be all good,
That's not a bad advice. I'm sure that's been done many times. We do that every once in a while. If we're outside playing, my kids take a bath in the hose. If it's warm outside, why not? Here we go.
Hey, AJ,
grab a bottle of soap.
I did that too, and it worked. It worked,
it's
absolutely.
Great. And the kids will be talking about that forever. They'll want to do that every night. That's the fun thing about it. So one of the things I definitely wanted to ask you was, so you're doing everything on TV. There's nothing you can't do. It seems like. I know if there's something you haven't done, you'll prepare yourself to get ready for it. But what would be like I think you even said it, you're basically living your dream job. But what would be like an assignment you haven't had, or a job that you haven't gotten to do, or someone you haven't gotten to interview that you would like to get to within the next couple years?
Whoa, that's pretty profound. And I really have, AJ, I think the best and honest way to answer that question is I don't want to ever feel as if I have arrived. Now, I know I can't do all things, but I'm certainly going to try to get close to it. And broadening out the horizons, being involved in news is something that's pretty fascinating to me. And I would love to be a key player, if you will, covering, say, a political campaign and being able to talk to people to try to bridge the gap in terms of what I do as a reporter, because I know so many people may feel that they've got to sing the party line in everything that they're doing. My aim would be to find out, well, what's the right thing to do, irrespective of party affiliation. So I really enjoy getting into intellectual discussions with people, having just an organic conversation to see where it leads for the purpose, again, of bridge building. And I hope that we'll be able to continue to do that. So I'm enjoying what I'm doing in news. I don't want to leave sports because sports is fun. It's enjoyable. I get a chance to meet some great people like yourself. I continue to take notes. I want to continue to see myself as being eternally young, because that's what, fuels the fire, if you will, but also being intellectually challenged in doing a number of different things. CBS is going to be doing a special news bit on the 50-year anniversary of the Civil Rights signing of the Civil Rights Bill. And I'm looking to sit down and talk with some iconic people like Harry Belafonte and the like. So it's going to be fascinating. I just want to always stay interested, stay excited, and always explore. The curiosity is what really drives me.
It must, with seeing what you can do. And I don't know if you saw the recently Barbara Walters is stepping down, and they had a big special on her. Did you see that when they showed a bunch of her interviews that she's done? They kind of compiled them, and then she was talking about them.
Yes,
man, that was. And I've always respected what she's done, but I've never really followed her closely, because since a lot of the times since I've known her, she's been on The View, and that's not really the show that I'm turning on when I have a free minute. But I think it's The View, one of the yeah. But
nope, you got it right. That's correct.
Yeah, and so. But man, watching those in all the interviews she's done, and when they put them together, and then you show how she's talking about how she prepared for them. I mean, that was a ballsy lady. I mean, she's over there interviewing warlords. She's going everywhere around the world, and I give her a lot of credit because she was good. And that's something that, do you think, would you see yourself traveling around and doing interviews in that kind of mold aside from football, maybe when it's the off season?
Yes, the 60 Minutes program and 60 Minutes Sports affords me those opportunities, and we're in the process of pitching a couple of those stories now that would have me traveling doing exactly what you're talking about. And let me pay tribute to Barbara Walters, because she, talk about a pioneer. It was not easy for her in the early days when some of her male news colleagues did not, as you saw in that program, want to be working alongside of her. So she had to work twice as hard to get the opportunity to be considered just decent at it. But she always had a standard of excellence that she lived up to, and she did a remarkable job. And people could trust her because they knew that she would be fair. She'd ask the tough questions, and I think that's always important to do, but you can ask it in the right fashion. And she didn't try to make herself the story. I've always admired that. One may get into an interview situation where you've got a tough interviewee, but the point is not to make yourself the story, trying to be bigger than the story. You're just curious. You ask all of the right and intelligent questions that you know that the viewing audience would want to hear the answer to. And if people see that you're being honest and genuine, that they're going to be attracted to, and that will serve you well in the long run, particularly when you're going after the more controversial topics to deal with. And Barbara was exceptional at handling that, just as Ted Koppel was when he was doing it for ABC's Nightline. Excellent interviewers.
There really is an art to it, I think, and that's those are some of the best. And I think it's exciting to see some of the young people coming up doing that. But I know you have a super tight schedule over there, so I'm gonna wrap this thing up. But I definitely want to just make sure I let you know how appreciative I am of you coming on here and taking your you have a 40-minute break and you decided to jump on here over Skype, and I know it's one of the first times you've kind of been on here, so I appreciate you taking that leap and jumping over into this whole technology world. You know, that's something that I believe me, I don't know how to do much either. I have some help, but thank you very much, and I think I really want to thank you for actually being a legit good guy that you've gotten back to me. I remember I emailed you shortly after I went to boot camp, and you get right back to me, and you're just really helpful the whole time. You've been helpful forever, and always it's amazing the response. I'm shocked every time I get an email back from you, so thank you. I know you're a crazy schedule and you're very busy, but you're one of the good guys, I think, and that's why everyone loves watching you and why you've had such longevity, and I think your career is just starting to peak. Who knows where you're going to go from here, so I'm excited to watch, as I'm sure everybody else is too.
Well, AJ, I know my daughter told me to retire this expression that I'm too dark to blush, and I do think I am. But AJ, I'm humbled that you would say that. I appreciate it. But let me just say, people helped me along the way, and I want to make certain that I am reciprocating and doing the very same thing in the same quality fashion. And AJ, everything that you said about me, right back at you. I got a chance to know your heart. And that's one of the good things about this business is when you find people who really are good people, who care about others. Yes, you're on a wonderful platform where you impact so many people, and you've got contacts, associates, acquaintances, and friends that run the spectrum. But I love the way that you treat everybody the same, whether that person is a prince or a pauper. And that means an awful lot to me because you're accessible and you're going to impact so many people, many more people because of that, as opposed to carrying yourself in a regal fashion and you're untouchable. So I wish you the continued success as well too, AJ.
All right, JB. Well, good luck with everything coming up. I know we'll all be watching you on Sundays to get our fix for football, that's for sure. Myself, as a current player and a fan of the game, I love watching you, and just thank you once again, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
God bless you, AJ. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you for joining in. Please visit thehawkcast.com, where you can discover the next guest, get a little more information about why this exists, watch past episodes, or link over to iTunes. And tell some friends too, so we can all hear more great stories together.